Hello everybody. I thought I would show you how I make my apothecary jars. So I didn't talk during this. I figured I'd do a voiceover. I'm using some black paint, sponge brush, and there's water in that cup. And I spilled it. Typical. So usually I get my jars just from things around the house, some things that have gone bad or going bad or old in the fridge or things we've used up. Or I just go buy some at like dollar store or Hobby Lobby. So what I'm doing is I am dabbing some paint and I've watered it down. So I want it to be somewhat translucent so that you can actually see what's in the jar. So I think this jar is bat eyes. I've got some googly eyes that I'm going to put in there and maybe a little bit of like Spanish moss. And I want it to be kind of drippy because I want it to look old and worn, like it's been sitting on a shelf in an apothecary. Words trip me up all the time. So that's just what I'm doing here, and I'm out of breath because I just got done running up the steps. So yeah, I just keep doing that on this particular jar, and then I think what I do next is I kind of dab a little bit of it off. Now, acrylic paint will chip off of the jar, so sometimes you can put like Mod Podge over top of it to seal it in, which I probably will do in one of the next steps. But for this video, I just did just like the first part. Some of the jars already have things in them because I was bored one night and just put some stuff in them. But I can go over the stuff that's in those jars in the next video where we will embellish them a little bit more. So that's that jar. And then I take this metal lid and I cover it in Mod Podge, which I'm guessing that's what I'm looking for. And you can probably hear my kid laughing in the background. So that's cinnamon. I just buy cheap cinnamon from the dollar store, and I labeled it craft cinnamon because there was an incident where the craft cinnamon ended up in with the regular cinnamon. And yeah, that was fun because there were globs of glue in it. So now I label it and I don't put it in the spice cabinet anymore. So I'm coating this whole thing with a really thick layer of Mod Podge because I want that cinnamon to really stick on there. And you really can never have too much Mod Podge, I guess. So then I'm scooping off some of the glue, make sure all of the surfaces are covered, and then I'm going to shake the cinnamon on top of it. Now I do put it into a bowl to contain it because it does go everywhere. I mean, it smells delicious, but do you really want it all over the place? No. And this did not want to come out. I should have just opened the other side up and made my life easier, but why do easy things when you could do it the hard way? So then I just kind of twist it and turn it until I get it all over the place. And the other good thing about putting it in the bowl is that when you're done, you could just scoop it back up and use all the leftovers to put it back in the container. So waste not, want not. I mean, it is $1, but why waste it? So now we just let that dry. And I could see that I missed a spot. So I think that's why I'm probably dabbing it. But that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's supposed to look like rust. Okay, so this little bottle is actually plastic. I picked this one up at Dollar Tree, and I believe I showed it to you in my haul. My voice doesn't want to work tonight. So again, we're going to coat this with Mod Podge and put the label on. The labels I got off of Etsy a couple of years ago, but they still have them, so I can put them in the description box if anybody wants them. They have a ton of different ones, so it really depends on what you're looking for. These are like a perfect size. Well, you can really print them any size you want. But I did print 2 different kinds of labels when I did it, so I'll have to go back on and find them. Oh, I didn't do Mod Podge first. I apologize. I did the aging first. So that's pretty much what I do. I just try and age the bottles to make them look a little bit old. And then literally just dip it in the watered down paint, squeeze it on there, and let it drip down the bottle. And it just kind of does its own thing. Let gravity do its thing. And because I didn't want the bottle to be perfectly clear and new looking, I brushed the paint down the bottle to give it a little bit of like an opaqueness to it. It still looks kind of muddy, which is what I was going for. What am I looking for now? Okay, I must have found it. Or not. So I use a lot of Dollar Tree soaps to fill my bottles. They're nice because they're inexpensive and you can get different colors. I've used them in the past. Oh, there it is. I found it. So that was the teeth label. And then I'll just Mod Podge on. The paint's still a little bit wet, but I mean, the Mod Podge is wet, so it really doesn't matter. You can just kind of slap it on there. Everything will dry. Now, I always Mod Podge first and then press the label on there and then put a really thick layer of Mod Podge over the label. And that helps to hold all the edges down. And the other thing I like about this is it will wrinkle the label, but we kind of want it to be wrinkled because then it gives it that old effect. You can even tear the edges of the labels. You can burn them with a lighter and then put them on. So it really depends on how much time you want to invest in making these and how old you want them to look. I mean, it's really personal preference. I tore some of them. I've never actually burned any of them because I'm clumsy and that probably wouldn't work out well for me. So I usually just, what I'm doing now is I'm pressing the sponge down and getting all the excess out of it. Because, you know, Mod Podge is not cheap. So these are the teeth that I got from Michael's. And I saw them in a video and I was like, I have to get these specifically for this label. So what I do is I'll get all my labels and I'll make a list of what the labels are and then kind of run around the house looking for things that match up to what I think I can get away with for an ingredient. And they don't all have to have ingredients. Some of the bottles are like old pill bottles, like Advil, so you can't see through it. So I just kind of use the bottle and put a label on there and, you know, make pretend. But some of them you kind of want to see what's in them. It gives it, you know, it's a little bit more real, a little bit more fun. So I wanted to go for like a muddy, murky, this is going to sound really gross, but almost like a tartar plaque kind of colored water. I was looking for something more orange, but it actually turned out pretty cool at the end. It's all trial and error, this step, and you'll see that because I fill it, I mix it, I dump it out, I fill it again, I mix it. And you can always just save your ingredients and use them in another bottle. So this one I used green soap, and then I knew I wanted to add food coloring. So this is me trying to make sure the soap is down in between all of those teeth. And it's not quite liquidy looking yet because there's not enough in there. So there we go, I filled that up some more. So then I'm going to add some food coloring to this because I don't want it to be so perfectly green because it's supposed to be like decay. And I don't know how to open a food coloring box apparently. So I believe I added yellow first. And you got to remember, food coloring is pretty potent stuff. So if you want to mix it outside the jar first to get the color that you want, you can do that. But I just kind of fly by the seat of my pants here. And then I added some red. And because it's soap, it doesn't really stir that well in such a small bottle. So you had to shake it. So it's kind of like a martini, shaken, not stirred. Shake it up. There we go. That looked a little too bloody. I'm like, definitely don't want bloody teeth. I mean, you can if that's what you're going for. But that kind of grosses me out a little bit. So I didn't want the bloody teeth effect. Plus, I have a thing with teeth. It's weird. That's kind of gross, which is all part of the charm, I guess. This voiceover thing's a lot of work. Gotta talk a lot. Okay, so I'm not satisfied with this color at all. It's not really what I was going for. This is more like a fiery orange. So I decided to add more red, which I don't know why. Oh, and then I added green. I'm just going for all of it here. Now, red and green make brown. Keep that in mind. Give it a little shimmy, shimmy, shake. Now it's too dark. So here's where my trial and error come in. You can see the teeth. It looks kind of crummy and dark and murky, but that's not the color I was going for. So, back to the drawing board. Now I'm going to dump it out. It was really nasty looking. And you could skip through some of this. I just thought I'd keep it all in here so you could see all the steps. Now we're going to add more green. I think I shake it up again, and then I think I dump it out again. Like I said, this is kind of a trial and error experiment. It's like a mad scientist. And if you decide you like that color, then you can keep it. It's totally up to you. I knew the color I was kind of going for, and I knew that this wasn't quite it. But look how cool that looks. All right? So now we're going to shake it up again. No, we're not going to shake it up again? Make up your mind, sis. Okay, we're not shaking it up again. Clearly, I don't know my own movements. But yeah, I like that you can kind of see the teeth, but you can't quite see all the way through the bottle. So now, what am I doing? Oh, okay. I'm painting some of the goo that was in the bowl, that was in the jar, over the label. I don't know why I did that because there's soap in it. It's just going to be a mess. So skip that part. Don't do that. All right, next we have this other jar that I painted last year and the lid was stuck. So instead of going and getting the little grippy thing that opens the lid, I use scissors, which is not the smartest thing to do. Okay, what are we doing with this jar? Oh, am I going to put the goo in there? I'm going to put the goo in there. Why did I do that? I don't know. Do you know why I did that?
I have no clue. That's fully on you.
That's my sidekick. So this jar, I think I just was really indecisive here. What am I going to do here? Okay, we're going to add green. I don't remember what was going in here. I know that I have a label that says cobweb oil, so maybe that's what I was going for. I have so many jars and so many labels that I don't really remember what they all say. Oh, now we're going pink. Oh boy, we really don't know what we're doing here, do we? I didn't do anything. It just added to it and made it not any lighter. Which I think I end up dumping this out again. Hot Mess Express. Yeah, this is me realizing that did not work. I'm like, oh, no, it's still the same color. And then I check it again, like it's going to change from 1 second to another. So what do? We dump it out. It looks like sludge, like oil. Like something you find in an old drain in an abandoned house.
It looks like venom. Good.
Venom? That's a good one. Venom goo. And what are we doing now? Now we're pouring more pink into it. Again, feel free to skip through this part. Don't know what I was doing here. Clearly, as per the expression on my face. Okay, so we're moving along. We're getting rid of that. And what are we going to do with that? Oh, we're just keeping it. Okay, I think I did put the cobweb oil label on this one. Yes, I did. Ha, I remembered. Yay me. Okay, so I just do the same thing. I Mod Podge it. Lots of Mod Podge. Coat the label. And I'm pretty sure I Mod Podge the whole jar this time because I wanted to put cobwebs on the outside of it, which is what I'm looking for. I have paint all over my hands. I was super sticky and covered in paint by the time I was done this. And I just did my nails the night before, so that was an amateur move because some of the nail polish came off. This is why I don't do my nails while I'm crafting. So I have some extra spider webs from years past, and I just kind of pull a little piece off because if you're familiar with these, you know that a little bit goes a long, long way. And scissors did not like cutting them. Okay, so we're going to stretch this and put it over the jar. And then once this jar is dry, which it is dry now because this was yesterday, I'm going to go back and I'll show you how I add on some more embellishments. Like we'll hot glue some spiders and some other things to the jars to give them some more depth, I guess is the word that I'm looking for. That's not a great angle for me. But you're not looking at me, you're looking at what I'm doing. Alright, so that is coated in Mod Podge, and because I'm sticky, I end up coated in spider web. So you kind of just, like I said, you wing it. You kind of just pull it and whatever works. Once it dries, I try not to put anything really on the bottom because I want them to sit flush. But once it dries, you can cut it off, which is what I plan on doing. So you pull it on there, and then what I end up doing is I put a very light coat of Mod Podge over it because I want it to stay on the jar. And here's where I fight with the web. It's like that scene in Christmas Vacation when Clark has the magazine stuck to his fingers and he can't get it off. That's pretty much, that was this whole thing.
Except spider webs.
Except it's spider webs. They're the messiest. They're messy when they're not covered in glue. And it was everywhere. It was on the sponges. I ended up actually having to throw that sponge away because it split open on me. Now, if you could have seen the table and the mess, you'd have been like, whoa. There was lots of stuff going on. So that was dry, the cinnamon. So what I'm doing now is I'm tapping all of the excess cinnamon off. And then it's going to go into the bowl, and then I'll dump that back into the jar. But then I'm going to coat the top of it. Now this part, you want to use a really thick layer because the cinnamon, if you use a too thin of a layer, the cinnamon will come off. You could see it coming off on the brush right there. So you want to put a thick enough layer so that you can move the top layer of the Mod Podge around without it disturbing the cinnamon, if that makes sense. So I usually put like a big glob of it and then just kind of move it around. I mean, some of it's going to come off, but it's easy when you do, like, see those globs? It's easier when you have those and you just move them around because it's going to dry clear anyway, and it'll keep the cinnamon from coming off, and you'll get that rusted, aged effect from it. And then when I show you the next part, when we put the embellishments on, I'll show you everything dried. It's not the best camera angle that I had. Oh, I didn't even see that go underneath. It was just trying to get it all on there, I guess fairly quickly. It's a messy process doing the cinnamon on the jars, but it really is kind of a cool outcome. I used to do it on tin cans to make them look rusty, and they smell nice. So I used to do it on tin cans, and then I'd put flowers in them. Now for this jar, I decided to do kind of the same technique where I do the watered down black paint. But then I go in and darken it up a little bit more. I kind of wish I could have gotten the tag off of the back of that little tombstone, but it did not want to come off. I actually had to scrape the edges of that out in the street to wear it down to get it to fit into that jar. It almost looked like chalk. So this jar is supposed to be graveyard dirt, and what I did was I used some leftover potting soil that I had and a miniature tombstone, and then those little bones that are in there I got from the dollar store. I believe they have them again this year. So I'm mixing the brown paint in with the black paint because I want the outside to look like it had been sitting in like either mud or dirty water. I just wanted it to look a little bit mossy. So I end up going back in afterwards and adding some green paint to this as well, and then I think a little bit of like a terracotta at the end. And because all that water ran down the front of the jar over the label, I do kind of dab it off a little bit with a paper towel just so you can see the words, but it does leave a bit of a stain, so it kind of worked out really well. I do want to note that I have a piece of cardboard down on the table, so that's why I don't care that the paint spilled. sponging this green, black, brown mixture all around the bottom of the jar to give it that kind of mossy, dirty effect. And then I do it around the top as well. And when you're painting a metal lid, honestly, it's easier to just spray paint them. But this was like 8 o'clock at night and I didn't feel like going outside to spray paint a lid. So I just do multiple layers of paint and then let them dry. I mean, if you're painting multiple jars, you can just keep going back and forth in between jars and just add another layer. And this is going to get covered up with something anyway, like some burlap or web or twine or something. So I'm not really that concerned if some of the paint, is still a little bit see-through. Now this is the cloche that I got at the Dollar Tree. I have to get the glue gun out and add this stuff to the inside, but first we want to paint it. So the painting is really what takes the most time because you have to wait for everything to dry. But if you do multiple pieces at once, like I said, and go from one piece to another, it's not that bad because you can knock a lot of them out, and then while you're doing another one is drying, and then, you could do it in parts where you go back and do the next step another time where you add all the embellishments, which is what I'm going to do. this jar I filled with some slime that I got at the dollar store. I got 2 bottles of it. I couldn't find just green, which is what I wanted because it's for snake venom. And it was kind of like green and hot pink. And I think maybe a little bit of yellow. So I'm like, whatever, it'll work. I used 2 of them. So I'm making a top for this one. I think this might have been a pickle jar. So I got a brown paper bag. And I just crunched a piece of it up. And now I'm going to measure by just fitting it over the top and squeezing it on there. And it doesn't have to be perfect because it's supposed to be old. But I don't want the label to be completely covered either. So now we're going to use lots of Mod Podge, like before, to coat the lid and the rim of the lid. And then once that's coated, we could put the paper bag back on the top, just like this, like a little hat. Okay, and then you want to press it down just to make sure that it's sticking. And I was playing with the little pop thing on the top of the lid. You couldn't hear it there. And then again, lots of Mod Podge on the top. I kind of want it to look a little waxy. And the more you wet it with the Mod Podge, the more wrinkles you'll get in the bag. And then when it dries, it'll dry like a little bit stiff. The bag wasn't sitting exactly how I wanted it to. It was a little too long on some sides, so I did tear some of the pieces off. You just have to be careful not to tear too much, or you can always kind of layer the bag over itself, which I end up doing. This jar was actually a Bath and Body Works candle that I burned almost all the way down. So I kind of just left the piece of wax in the bottom and then filled it with that pink soap. So it's supposed to be brain juice or something.
It helps your brain.
I was trying to show you some of the other labels that I had left over, and I had a big glob of black paint on my thumb and got it all over, but that's okay. We're going to paint over them anyway. So some of these I still have to get jars for, or ingredients for. Like the rat, I need a rubber rat, and it's for that particular label. So I'll have to still figure out those last few. I don't know what I'm looking for here. Okay, so here's some jars that I've made in years past. This is seething spiders, so I filled it with some of those fake cobwebs and some plastic spiders, and then did the same thing to the outside of the jar where I painted it and then covered it in the cobwebs. This one is skull maggots. So this is basically just clear soap and rice. So that is it for this video. Thanks for watching.